like, oh, it was a stone ward, I was like, ugh.
Like, are you against stone wards?
I guess I'm against stone wards as a will shaper. Ugh.
How dare they mold stone?
How dare.
How dare they be where they need to be when they are needed? Hi, I'm Mel.
And I'm Belle.
And this is Mel and Belle.
Ah.
Welcome to the third episode of Crem-talking Wind and Truth.
Woo! Very exciting. Today we're going to focus on day one of the book. As we kind of covered, and you probably know by now, the book is structured in a 10-day format. And it just so happens that for this episode, we're just going to talk about all of day one, hopefully.
Perfect. Let's get started. So first, where is everyone?
It's a good question. There's quite a lot of characters. We made this little diagram. It's very fancy. Basically, I'm focusing on the major players in this. Kaladin and Syl, Dalinar, Navani, Renar and Relaine, Bridgeford, they're all at Urithiru. There are other people there, but, that's what I feel like the important ones are. And then Shallan and herself and her two Spren, and then Adolin and also Kalek are also at listing integrity.
Something I love about this is it sets us up in a way that reminds us of the very beginning, right? Because this day we're just focused on Kaladin's POV and Shallan's POV. So that's why we have these two locations. But yeah, just to start, we know it gets complicated, right?
Yeah, and then we're really gonna need diagrams to keep track of everyone.
I was thinking maybe we could do like a map.
Yeah.
You just have a map. But then I thought that also doesn't work because then that map needs to show like
Shadesmar. Yeah.
And who knows what else, right? So it's a lot.
It's a lot. But that's where everyone is. And no, I do agree with you about the significance of starting on Kaladin and Shallan's POV. It just kind of feels like ending where you started. It's very poetic, and then I also think it really works to call back and focus on how these two characters have like grown and changed throughout the 5 books.
Yeah, I think that you had mentioned earlier when we were preparing for this that they kind of swap places, and we'll go in more in depth on that, right? But kind of this setup and this strange, is the word juxtaposition?
It is.
Ooh, so this strange juxtaposition of Kaladin being somewhere where he's not fighting, and Shallan being somewhere where she's fighting for her life.
How times have changed. So, to get started, we're just gonna split them in half, make it a little easier so we're not jumping back and forth like the book is. We'll talk about Kaladin first and go from there.
So, Kaladin's saying lots and lots of goodbyes right now because he's going on an adventure and he doesn't even fully understand the adventure himself. We wanted to go through exactly who he's saying goodbye to, right? He's going to say goodbye to his family. He has to say goodbye to Wit. Gotta say goodbye to Dalinar, Bridgeford, and of course the throuple, which we're all sad to see split up at the beginning of this book.
They're too powerful. They cannot be kept together.
He knows that it's the beginning of this 10-day adventure, this 10-day lead up to the end, to the Contest of Champions.
It's a very somber tone, very bittersweet. It's the idea of like, there is a goodbye, but there's still like stuff happening. And so it's a weird, steal your word, juxtaposition of just, happiness, bittersweet, that kind of stuff.
It's hard because I imagine that you are sad, right? But we're not really sure what's going to happen, so we don't know, should we be sad? Is this going to be the last time? What's going to happen after these 10 days? Am I going to see you again? Am I going to see you the same way again? It's not famous last words, or he's not on his deathbed. We don't know what's going to happen to any of the people that he says goodbye to.
Yeah, so I'm gonna hop to the next slide because I feel like that kind of fits. we're saying goodbye, but we're also saying hello to happiness. I love the question mark and then the wind with the 3 question marks. It's quite, I agree. I love the opening line of this book, if we don't count the prologue. I know if you take a writing class, everyone's going to tell you that your opening line is going to be the most important of the book because it's what like brings your readers in, sets the tone kind of thing. This one is just like a 3-word sentence. It's just Kaladin felt good. And I love the simplicity in that because my man has gone through a lot and it has not been that for a while. So it's kind of nice, but it also is like a really succinct way to sum up everything that he's gone through and also kind of like where he's at. I think the next line is something of like, he's felt worse and he's felt better, but he felt good. And I was like, oh, okay.
I find it suspicious.
You find it suspicious? Oh, okay.
I think it's very eerie to start the book off with someone who has been battling depression the entire series, feeling good for a change, and then he starts to hear a voice, and we know that's not the greatest sign in the Cosmere when our protagonist starts to hear a voice and they don't know where the voice is coming from. I mean, I imagine in life that's probably not a great sign no matter who you are. But especially in these books, because that means there's some type of glorified entity, some type of highly invested entity or god trying to contact you. And that just spells trouble.
It does. I like that you feel it, you find it suspicious. That makes sense. It's kind of like the calm before the storm. So you feel like, you know, he feels good now, but like it's gonna get worse and we know it's gonna get worse. So I don't know, there's like a suspension of disbelief or something there.
I think it's literally the calm before the storm. I think
the calm before the storm.
Very well put.
Thank you.
I think that's literally what's going on here.
Speaking of the wind, let's talk about it. What is the wind, Mel?
Well, we don't know what the wind is yet, Belle.
What do you mean? What talks about it?
You're right, that does happen in this chapter. I can...
It's yeah, I can't imagine trying to keep track of what has happened and hasn't happened. So, the wind. It's this voice that starts talking to him, as you were saying. Kaladin's hearing it. In the text, it's italicized, which I find is interesting because I think the Stormfather is also italicized. So we're gonna put that on a being akin to the Stormfather, or like talking to Kaladin in the same way that the Stormfather talks to Dalinar. And then kind of the wind says all of these things to Kaladin, and I appreciate the battle shock, or like the slightly, like you were saying, like Kaladin's gotta be slightly unhinged, because he just takes this wind talking to him like nothing. He's like, this is not the weirdest thing that's happened to me. He just accepts it and moves on. He does tell Wit about it, and Wit reveals that the wind is part of the, they call it the old magic. So the same, oh gosh, you're probably going to do a better job at explaining this to me. The same dark magic, old magic that, like, Dalinar used when he made his wish. Help me out here.
Well, it is kind of complicated, and we're going to go over it more later in the book, so I don't want to say too much. But the old magic essentially is more like the remnants of Adonalsium, rather than the shards, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you'd think, oh, that's the same thing, right?
No.
Like, shards of Adonalsium, remnants of Adonalsium. But my understanding is it's the remnants of Adonalsium when Adonalsium was still whole. And so the wind is part of that. Kind of similar to a cognitive shadow.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I have this in my notes as, one, being someone who's finding out about the wind the first time. I have this in my notes of this being Roshar's, like, secret magic power. I feel like there's, like, 3 magic systems over in, Mistborn. And so in my mind, I was like keeping track of all the moving parts that like Roshar has of like, you know, theoretically like Shadesmar is unique to Roshar. The Fused, I feel like they could kind of be their own magic system. Obviously our lovely Radiance. And so I was like, yeah, sure, the wind. You can throw that in. It's got something. Is it weird to consider that part of its own, like, magic system? I just feel like it's gonna give Kaladin different powers or do something different than what he's doing currently as a Radiant.
Like I said, I can't say too much. The wind is interesting because it reminds me of the mist. Like, imagine do you remember in Mistborn when the mist was personified, right? So it reminds me of that. So it just is something to think about. The thing that stood out to me with these different things that the wind is saying to Kaladin,
okay,
right, is this first one, where the wind says that they're sorry to ask more of Kaladin. So that implies that the wind has asked something of Kaladin before. And we know there are times where the Stormfather, or what Kaladin thinks is the Stormfather's voice, it speaks to him. He thinks that the Stormfather must have said this thing, but it's not always super clear. And so it kind of makes me want to go back and read and see, was that actually the wind saying that to Kaladin reread? In that very moment? In another reread, right? In like the third or fourth reread. Brandon Sanderson does this a lot, where you see something for the first time, or you think it's the first time, and you're like, where did this come from? It came out of nowhere. And then you reread and you go back and you're like, oh, it was there the whole time.
You're kind of right, because Wit reveals within his little discussion when Kaladin's saying goodbye as well, that the wind, the first time Kaladin probably heard the wind, was the first time he ran into the Wit in the caverns, where Wit was playing his song, telling his story, and I think there's a description that sounds like the world was singing back to him, and Wit kind of just reveals that that was the wind that was echoing. So, I mean, maybe more to your point, like, not only did the wind have hands in what Kaladin was doing from, like, the beginning, I feel like that's also the wind pushing Kaladin to, like, listen to the Wit and give maybe his words more thought and meaning than he would have either if the entire world did not start singing back and, you know, supporting Wit.
That is good, and you're right, that is something that Wit talks about when they have that conversation.
So, I will say, I do think it's funny. I didn't think this reading this, but looking at these words all lined up, I was like, wow, the wind kind of sounds like a really needy girlfriend.
A needy girlfriend?
You're what I need. Maybe I've been reading too much romance books, but I was finding that really funny.
Just imagining the wind that way.
Only in fantasy can you write these things, and I feel like when you say them out loud, they sound so cheesy. But in, like, the context, it works.
I wonder what the wind sounds like. Like, if it just, like, whoosh, come to me, whoosh.
Well, I feel like ask then along that line is, like, what does the Stormfather sound like? If we're gonna feel like the Stormfather sounds like the personification of thunder and lightning, and that he's got a very, like, deep, booming voice that, like, rattles you to your core, I wonder if you're right, like, the wind is also kind of, like, whooshy or, like, quiet. And maybe the wind is quiet, and that's why we're only now just getting, like, the wind is talking to you, and not realizing that earlier. Though also maybe that's more because this is, like, the first time where Kaladin's actually, like, stopping and taking a break and breathing and not super stressed out and all over the place, so he can actually listen. I don't know. There's a lot to be unpacked here.
When you were saying that, I was just thinking, like, like a flute. Like, the wind might sound like a flute.
There's definitely a lot of things. Like, I am intrigued by the fact, because Wit does tell him, like, you need to go and play this flute across Roshar. But you're right, like, a flute would be similar to the wind, and so maybe that's why, like, And that's what I was thinking too when I was like, secret magic system is that Kaladin's gonna be able to like summon the power of the winds or whatever through the use of the flute. I don't know. Maybe something, maybe not that dramatic, but like something more to akin what Wit did at the beginning when he was playing his flute and it responded.
And I focus more on like on wind as like an entity. Mm-hmm. But the more you talk about it and it being referred to as like the old magic, maybe there really is some type of magic system that's tied to this.
Well, I kind of read the wind as like a kind of spren, that it is a power. I was also kind of thinking, because old magic, remind me, Dalinar went to go speak to Cultivation, but Cultivation's sidekick, what is...
The Night Watcher?
The Night Watcher. The Night Watcher's old magic, right? That's kind of what...
That's what they refer to it as. We'll have to talk about that more later on in the book.
Okay.
We go into that dynamic a lot more.
So do you feel like we talked about the wind as much as we can without spoiling anything?
For now, I think so. I think that it is good and related to your idea of things look different when you line it all up. I think the next slide that we have is another thing that looks different when you line it all up.
Oh, yeah, let me hop over. This is the Nature of Wind and Truth, which is this day's epigraphs. So just the little quotes that every chapter has and always had for Stormlight Archive. This time we're focusing on Knights of Wind and Truth, which I have so many notes on trying to figure out, like, who's talking, what's going on. I think at first, with, like, the first one, I was like, Kaladin went on to retire and write a book, like Dalinar did, and this is his Oathbringer. That's not true. It references Kaladin in third person. So there went that idea. But I don't know. I have thoughts. I was thinking maybe it's Sigil, because that kind of feels like that fits in line with what he's already doing for Bridge 4, what he would want to do afterwards, and then also just kind of being Wit's protege. That just feels like something Sigil would do. Thoughts? Or do you know who it is?
I do know who it is.
Oh.
You do find out who it is. So I can't say who it is, but Sigil's a very good theory. Sigil's a theory that I had at one point. When I was first reading, my number one theory was Yasna.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I know at the very beginning here, we're not too focused on Yasna, so she's kind of in the background at the moment during day one. But I won't confirm or deny if it is Yasna. Just that, like, I think Sigil's another really good option because he's also very studious and would be in the realm of somebody who would write a book about what's about to happen.
You know, looking at this now, I'm gonna throw Relaine in there. I don't know why, but Relaine. Aside from who wrote it, there's a lot of interesting information. As always, I feel like the epigraphs kind of serve as the overarching narrator, just kind of giving you a more clear idea of what's happening from like a Cosmere / like overarching perspective rather than the character perspective, which we currently get.
Well, as a substantive question, like, what do you think this means? Similar to the death rattles, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think this implies about how this book is going to end? Because we know this is obviously written after these 10 days.
You know, it's very, very interesting question. I don't think it's in the slides here. Oh, no, you did put it in right here, this one. However, the wind did not think like a person does. This does not surprise anyone who has familiarity with the Spren, though such things are less common now than they once were. And that last part is really interesting because that immediately, like, tells me that the Spren aren't as common anymore. So the fact that they're, like, less common, I was like, what happens? What did you do? I don't know, I keep talking about magic systems, but what did you do to break the magic system?
Related to that, something that I took a note of rereading day one, there's a comment that there are suddenly lots of Spren everywhere right now during day one.
Specifically in Urithiru.
Exactly. So my thinking is that what bothers me is it kind of reminds me of when in preparation for a storm, right? Like the birds are migrating, like animals are all over the place in places they normally aren't because they're trying to escape or trying to leave, or they just sense something is wrong. And I think that the Spren are also having a similar reaction, or at least that's my theory for why that might be happening.
I think that's really interesting because I thought the book did provide a reason. Navani's bond with the sibling is kind of opening a perpendicularity similar to Dalinar's, but it's like consistently open because she's running all of Urithiru to do like the plumbing, the lifts, the heating, all of that stuff to just manage it. And so I was under the impression that the Spren were there because technically Urithiru is like closer to Shadesmar to start with because of that.
No, yeah, that does kind of explain it. That might debunk my theory, maybe.
I like your theory. Sorry. No.
You're like, debunked.
So I didn't realize, I feel like we just got started and I didn't realize that we have such different ideas of like what is going on.
True, and I think that would happen regardless of whether or not I had read it before already, because especially because there are things I caught in this one that I'm like, wow, what else did I miss? It's not too much like I know exactly what's going on, because there are definitely some things you've said that I'm like, oh, that's insightful. Didn't think about it that way.
I mean, likewise.
This is one of them.
Oh, cool. Did you have any quotes you specifically wanted to talk about here?
There's a moment here where it talks about how the wind couldn't tell the future, but somehow knew it anyway. Did you see that? And I know there's this thing about fortune in the Cosmere, but specifically on Roshar, it's like a bad omen to be able to tell the future, right? That's part of why Renarin's got some complex feelings about his abilities. So maybe there's something about the old magic not being able to use fortune as an ability like the new magic or Stormlight.
I will say, I feel like that idea of the wind talking is what kind of made me think it's R'laine. Like, that idea popped up in my head is because I feel like R'laine as, like, singers, I know they're technically disconnected from the sounds of Roshar right now, but then that's why they're the singers. But, you know, they're supposed to be more naturally connected to the world and the environment compared to the humans. And then also what also stands out to me is the fact that they mention the singers. Maybe in the future, after Wind and Truth, the singers are more important to, like, society, or they're more seen as equals. But I just feel like a human writing may not think to include the singers. And R'laine is the most prominent singer that we know, at least in terms of what's going on and how involved he is with the main story. So that's what makes me think it's him. As a historian, I find nuances relevant. As a philosopher, I find them enticing. Like, there's too many people this could be. Theoretically, this could be someone who isn't even from Roshar. No, they have to be from Roshar, because the wind's talking to them as a kid. So definitely from Roshar. Okay. I haven't said anything about this third slide, but this is just talking about the wind choosing champions. I don't know, maybe I already knew this, maybe I didn't, but I will check one off for predictions videos for that, Belle, because I feel like this kind of confirms. Kaladin is not the champion, but he is a champion. He's the champion of the wind, and you know, whatever he does along with Seth is gonna do something crazy. So I'm a Isabel Dunn. Correct.
Yeah, no, you're right. When you had said that in the predictions video, I did think like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. She has no idea like what that entails, but yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
I wasn't expecting the text to literally be like, Kaladin is a champion, but not the one you're thinking.
Yes.
So yeah, go me.
Go you.
So, just to kind of maybe make this, like, fit in a little more with, like, what's going on. Kaladin's just hearing the wind, mostly during the first part when he's saying goodbye to his family. He doesn't really hear it after that. When he goes talks to Wit and then says goodbye to Bridge 4 and Dalinar and all them, he stops hearing the wind and kind of just goes about his day. So who's next? Dalinar? Have any thoughts on Dalinar basically offering him the throne?
Oh, do I?
Oh!
Why don't I just read the summary of that real quick?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Change it up. This is the summary that I wrote for his conversation with Dalinar. Kaladin finally meets with Dalinar, who informs him that Szeth will accompany him to Shinovar. In front of Szeth, Kaladin expresses that he is very skeptical that he can help Szeth with his own personal journey and mental state. And Szeth says he doesn't need Kaladin to go with him because he has the voices and he is never alone. I love that part. And when I listened to it again, it just made me laugh because I could totally see that being adapted into like a movie or something and it just being pretty comical where he's like, do I really have to go with this guy? And then he's like, you don't need to go with me because I have the voices. I'm never alone. It's like, okay.
I'm very, very excited. Like, 'cause I feel like this is just like a little bit of a taste of their dynamic. I feel like Kaladin, for most of the Stormlight Archive, like plays the straight man. Like, all of this stuff happens to him. He does all these things, but usually he's very serious, very stern, very like straightforward. And I feel like Szeth is very similar to that. He just kind of goes about, you know, the assassinations, following whoever says has his rock says. But I feel like Szeth is just slightly off. Like you said, he's constantly hearing voices. I think that kind of forces Kaladin to stop being the straight man, or like he's the straight man, but now there's like a comedy undertone to it because it's like the straight man and the guy who thinks he's the straight man but isn't.
It is a pretty fun dynamic. I just love how Dalinar is like, let's go talk somewhere else, Kaladin.
He's like,
just like, let's just, you know, like, we'll talk somewhere else. We'll talk privately. We'll come back. We'll come back to Szeth.
I appreciate the nerve of Kaladin. The Kaladin this entire time, from asking from a boon in front of everyone, like, he does not care who's in the room. He's just gonna say what he wants. And I respect that.
And going back to what you said about their dynamic, they are a true, like, Windrunner and Skybreaker. You've got this Windrunner who's more spirit of the law, and then Skybreaker is extremely letter of the law.
Honestly, to kind of play around with this, it like, as much as, like, Moash is Kaladin's foil, it kind of feels like this is introducing Szeth as, or maybe more solidifying Szeth as another foil for Kaladin's character to kind of just compare with and, like, bounce off of. Interesting to look at, like, Szeth's uprising and where he came from, and we'll probably see more, especially if we end up meeting his dad when we're in Shinovar and getting to see Szeth and his dad's relationship versus, like, Kaladin and his dad's relationship, because I feel like there's gonna be a lot of similarities there, and then it's fun to see how Kaladin is more like the honor and like the emotion behind the law rather than Szeth, who is more like the law.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep reading, but
I thought we were gonna be done with this. I was like, we're gonna do the production video, and then we're just gonna be done, and then Mel will like stop. I don't know. What are you doing? You like say things, and my brain goes, okay, so I'm either right or I'm wrong. I can't decide which one. Is this a spoiler? Is this not a spoiler? Is she spoilering? I thought we were done with this, but apparently it's okay. It's okay. I just think it's really funny.
It's gonna be like it until the end. Until the very end.
We're gonna be like last 5 pages.
You'll go back and watch and be like, she was holding back on me.
She's holding back every
right, or like, no, I was wrong.
Interesting. I'm okay with being wrong. I'm just putting that out there. If I'm wrong, it's good. I like when books surprise me.
Good. Well, this is a surprising one.
Okay.
So, like we were saying, Szeth says he doesn't need to go with Kaladin because he has the voices. He's never alone.
Never alone.
And this seems to validate Kaladin's point that he's beyond Kaladin's help. And Dalinar takes Kaladin and Syl up to the top of the tower away from Szeth so that they can go and speak in private. This is a surreal moment, though, because Kaladin realizes that it's the first time he's been up there since he attempted to take his own life by jumping off of it.
Refresh my mind here, because I thought the last time he jumped off that roof was to save his dad.
Well, he did save his dad.
But he jumped off first, right? And then he just noticed
Yes.
his dad was falling and decided to save him. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
One of the climactic moments toward the end of Rhythm of War, Dalinar is actually technically there in that moment because Dalinar is the one who begged the Stormfather to give Kaladin an extra moment. And Kaladin has this vision with Tien and then sees his dad, speaks the fourth ideal.
Knowing Dalinar, this is one of his weird dad moments. I feel like Dalinar tries to father everyone, but he's not fantastic at it. But it feels like one of those things. This is his way of saying, like, I acknowledge, because I acknowledge how far you've come. You know, it's still significant because it calls back to that, but really, they're just going over to the other mountain to go, like, it's just like a casual fly thing.
So maybe he did realize. maybe Kaladin had a look on his face or something.
He was like, we gotta move. They were just gonna talk on top, and then Dalinar was like, oh, I messed up.
But even so, like, to go up to the snowy peak, it's just interesting to me that, like, this is the location.
To take it from what he's literally doing is, like, literally removing themselves from Urithiru. So it's, like, removing themselves from the situation to kind of look outside of it. It's a very literal representation of what they're doing. They're stepping back from Seth and just kind of everything that's going on and having that conversation. And then also, I think it's a way of, when you're talking about, like, Dalinar offering Kaladin to become king of Urithiru, being able to see all of Urithiru while you're having this conversation is kind of like, you will be in charge of all of that.
I like that. So going off of that,
Yeah.
the Dalinar then ponders whether it was ethical of him to agree to the contest of champions. Right? The king of Urithiru. One man deciding the current predicament for the entire planet. He talks about how Yasna has a book or has literature that she's written about the potential of having some type of representative government rather than having a monarch. So he's looking back on his life as a warlord, as a king, asking, is it even ethical that I've created this mess or agreed to this? No one had a vote. I just decided. And here we are getting ready for the contest of champions. I think that it shows maturity. And I mean, we would hope, right? He's like the grandfather, right? What did you call him in Navani? Like the parents for all the Radiants in a way?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you point that out, because I think within the same page, within that, like, same conversation section thing, there's another quote. This is more just, like, Kaladin thinking. It's on, like, page 62. He looked again toward Dalinar, whose contest with Odium was supposed to offer a way out of this mess. And I couldn't help, I have, like, notes, just, like, questioning. I couldn't help but think, like, does it? We beat Odium. Does that fix everything? I don't think it does. I know, like, there's a mess after war always, and that, like, just because the war is over doesn't mean the issues have stopped. Kaladin is looking at this very much, like, facing, like, the issues straight on and being like, this is what I need to tackle. While I think Dalinar is doing, like you said, like, the mature thing and looking at the past, kind of the future, too. That acknowledgement of, did he do something right then in making that decision? Are there going to be issues that pop up later because he's made that decision?
And it is good that we start off the book like this is like our introduction to Dalinar and Wind and Truth. It's because we get a very clear idea of like where he is mentally, the types of things he's pondering and reflecting on as he enters these last 10 days. Also, part of the motivation for him wanting to take Kaladin out of it to send him to somewhere else. I think he's trying to take some responsibility. Like, I made this mess. I need to be the champion. I need to handle it. I can't be the one to make these decisions and then make all of these kids have to deal with the repercussions of them.
Dalinar is kind of realizing that that move he pulled was something Taravangian would do, and I don't think he's fully comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, he probably knows Taravangian better than anybody. they have a special kind of understanding between them. Do they agree? No, but they understand each other.
No, but I think this might be one of the moments where like he's showing regret because when push comes to shove and he's put in the same circumstances that Taravangian was, he did the same thing technically. Maybe to a lesser extent and with less deaths. Actually, I can't say that. We don't know how many people are gonna die. There's a lot going on, so I don't know. I think Dalinar's in a weird place ruler-wise.
So he ponders whether or not it was ethical for him. And so this is where he gives Kaladin the mission, right?
Yeah.
Dalinar asks that Kaladin go to Shinovar with Szeth to obtain the honor blades from Ishar to aid in the war with Odium and the contest. Not asking him to do this so that he can go turn around and be the champion, but asking him to do this because he has hope that maybe having the honor blades on hand will give them some type of advantage or at least help them in order to fight against these fews that they're going to be battling.
Yeah, it's kind of important to remember why they're going to Shinovar rather than just,
Yeah, rather than therapizing.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether he wants it or not, all the therapy that he needs. So he asks Kaladin to do that, and he also says that if Kaladin could help Ishar and the other heralds, they could aid in the fight. So not just the honor blades, but also the heralds. And then that's when Dalinar also shows Kaladin the paper, the will, that makes him the heir to the year through throne. It's a big deal. It's a big moment, being like, hey, something happens to me, you're the next king.
If he accepts, this technically makes him a Kholin, which would mean he's like an adoptive brother of Adolin, and then Shallan's his like sister-in-law. I know technically like that makes sense. It's very sweet that Dalinar's doing that. Kaladin just got like his real dad back, and now Dalinar is kind of acknowledging the relationship that they had, that Kaladin did kind of see him as a father figure for a moment there. In doing this is kind of like being like, no, I accept you. You're also my son. He needs to stop adopting children and pay attention to Renarin, but I will let Dalinar pick and choose who he wants. I also just think that that was a little moment where I was like, okay, so the throuple can't happen because technically they're related now.
No, they're siblings.
They're siblings. Yeah.
No.
I was like, thank you for shipping the water. Go, Brandon Sanderson.
We will all go down. We will all go down with the ship. It is good stuff, though. I think that the dynamic between Kaladin and Dalinar is unique because, in a way, Kaladin is Dalinar's son who wasn't raised by the Blackthorn.
Ooh.
Right? So his first two sons, or his only two sons, right, really, they were raised by the Blackthorn. They weren't raised by the Dalinar that we know. I mean, it is kind of rare to have a protagonist like Kaladin and both of his parents are alive, right? But even being alive, he had a very strained relationship with his father, and so Dalinar really did act like a father figure and step in at a pinnacle time in Kaladin's life. I know Kaladin felt accepted by Dalinar, despite him being Allied Eyes, and there's that part of their relationship, but Kaladin never really saw the ugly of Dalinar the way that Renarin and Adolin did.
To kind of add on to that, I feel like the reason why Kaladin didn't see the ugly is because Dalinar was a changing man, and I also think Kaladin, like, as much as I want to say it's a father-son relationship, there's definitely like a level of like respect between colleagues between these two, and maybe like people who are like fathers and sons will be like, no, you really do learn from both your child and as a parent. I'm not a parent. You're a parent. You might be able to talk about this.
They're too young.
Okay. But like that idea
I mean, I learn from them in different ways, but I don't necessarily see them as colleagues just yet. But, there does come a day. I think that your point is valid.
Yeah, that they both learn a lot from each other. Like Dalinar as much as Kaladin does. Kind of.
I didn't think about it in that way, but you're totally right. They're both soldiers.
They're both soldiers. And maybe that's why Kaladin is the son he never got, technically, because Adolin is the prince, very royal. Like, he can definitely get in and do stuff, but he's not a soldier. Like, he follows the rules, but when push comes to shove, he kills what's-its-face. So that kind of shows, yeah, Sadeas. He kills Sadeas. So that kind of shows that, like, Adolin will follow the rules, but then also has his own sense of authority and right, is willing to break them, which I feel like is very different from Kaladin, which he's kind of had to learn that kind of, when push comes to shove, usually he is, like, rules. Kaladin has a very, like what you said, like soldier, like military mindset to him. And then Renarin just isn't a soldier. Not a fighter at all. Hopefully we see more of his character in this book. I think we've seen it a little bit in the past when he was like trying to learn how to fight with the shard blade. I have her complaints. I will be honest. This is one of those things in like reviews and stuff that I've heard, was that the complaint that like Dalinar's a terrible dad. He did not need to adopt Kaladin when he can't even care for his own 2 sons.
I do sympathize with him for making this decision, because it's not that he put Kaladin before Adolin and Renarin, right? Like it's that Adolin and Renarin both declined this.
Oh, that's true.
And he has, I don't know if you can call it a kingdom, but he has this position that he has to pass down to someone, and he has to pass down to someone who he can trust. And if he can't pass it down to one of his sons, and Gavinor is the heir to the Alethkar throne after Yasna. I have written down who's next in line. And I thought that this was interesting because, like, 2 of them we haven't really seen much from. So Kaladin's really, like, of course, definitely high up on, like, the first choice list after Adolin and Renarin. But the next in line are Dami, a Ririn Stone Ward, who we haven't really seen much.
I felt prejudiced, like, against the different classes when you're like, oh, it was a Stone Ward. I was like, ugh.
Like, are you against Stone Wards?
I guess I'm against Stone Wards as a Will Shaper. Ugh.
How dare they mold stone?
How dare.
How dare they be where they need to be when they are needed? Isn't that their ideal?
Yeah, like, now that you're explaining that, no, that makes a lot of sense and why he would be in line, but there's just some random dude, I felt.
The next one in line is Aladar, who's a high prince, and we also haven't seen too much of him, but, like, we've heard his name, right?
Yeah.
And the next in line after Aladar is... Do you want to take a guess? Do you remember?
It's what's his face. It's I remember his wife, his not wife. I remember Paloma.
His not wife. His partner.
His partner.
His mistress that won't marry him.
Because she's just great like that. Yeah, I remember Paloma, but I don't remember his name.
It's Sabariel.
Oh, Sabariel. Yeah, which... Oh, we're in drastic straits if he's, like, 3rd in line.
Well, I think that he is, I don't know about trustworthy, but he's definitely dependable. I mean, he's the one that's keeping commerce running. They're in the middle of a war, and he is making sure trade is still happening.
I think his is one of my favorite character arcs in the Stormlight Archive, because it's not a very major character arc. It's not like I feel like he grows, but I also feel like it's more just like us as readers learn more about Sabariel as everybody else does. We all think he's just like a silly dude who's not capable of anything and is just kind of a mess. But then we find very quickly, like you said, he's very dependable. He's got stuff together. He knows what he's doing, and everything he does is very deliberate.
While we're all worried about the big things, the unmade, the fused, the Spren, the Radiance, like all of these huge things happening, he's the one in the background making sure that people have a job and making sure people are eating and have clothing to wear.
Yeah, somebody's got to do that. Dalinar ain't doing that, so I'm glad somebody is.
And it's Sabariel, the same guy who gets massages out on the battlefield.
Arguably,
reading a book.
he he has the everyday fate of the world on his hand, which means he's been dealing with this stress a lot longer than Dalinar has.
Wisdom, maybe that's what it is.
Wisdom, and then, like, you just have to have a slight disconnect with the world, I think, in order to just, like, survive.
No, it's true. It's a very good point. So, after this conversation, Kaladin folds the sheet into his pocket and promises to consider Dalinar's proposition. He doesn't accept, though, but he does promise to consider. I think it's interesting because he's about to leave and he doesn't know if he's going to see anybody again, right? So he's saying all these heartfelt goodbyes. And then with Dalinar to leave and leave something like this so open-ended, something so important.
And I think Kaladin, he probably doesn't know what to say. I think he himself is also still juggling his change of status within the world and the hierarchy of, like, he did end up going from, like, a dark eyes to light eyes and technically higher up. He owns land now that he's never met the people on. And I know I think he has a conversation with his parents about that he's not entirely comfortable. So the idea of, like, here's a whole tower. Here's all the radiance, everything.
King of the Radiance.
Yeah, that would skyrocket him from very high to the very top. And I think he's still trying to find his footing with where he's currently at. And then I also think he's aware, he doesn't think he's coming back. So, like, why agree? Why agree and say that he'll do it when he's not going to come back and get taken out anyways? It's going to go to the Stone Ward or whoever else is in line. But we don't have time to think about thoughts and emotions because we got 10 days and the clock is ticking and we're just going to go.
Exactly.
So, speaking of going, after this conversation, Kaladin goes and says goodbye to Bridge 4. How did we feel about that?
Sad.
Yeah.
Sad and also proud.
Mm.
It was really interesting to see him, like, seeing Bridge 4 and seeing Bridge 4 as we don't know Bridge 4, right? Mm. Because we remember Bridge 4 from the beginning, what it became, what it was underneath Kaladin, right? And to see Kaladin going to see the new recruits, I think that's really cool. And to see Scar teaching and his words of encouragement to Kaladin. I loved when he told Kaladin, like, you're gonna come back. I watched you hanging from a roof out in the storm and you opened your eyes and you survived that. You made it through that. Why would you not make it through the next thing? Just super, I think, a breath of fresh air in a way, like, sad in a different way. Sad because, like, Bridge 4 is different now. So it's almost like mourning not what's going to happen, but that it's already over. Bridge 4 as we knew it is done, but it moves on and has this legacy that he created.
No, I get exactly what you're saying. I was just about to say, I think the goodbye to Bridge 4 is different from the goodbye with Dalinar and Wit. It is Wit and Kaladin saying goodbye for the last time, but there's also you're gonna go on and do things. Like, their stories aren't over, they're just splitting. So it feels conclusive, but there's still a continuation to it. Dalinar, obviously, similar goodbye, but we're leaving a lot of things open-ended, like you said. Bridge 4 is like, this would be the end of the book. Like, if I had to write an entire history of Bridge 4, this is where I end it.
Gosh, Belle.
What?
That's so sad. But true.
It's sad. I think it's
true.
Beautiful. I wrote down, like, honestly, I didn't have a lot to say on the Bridge 4 section. It kind of just felt like an emotional moment. Like, we were tying up Bridge 4's arc, basically. I'm sure they're going to be in the final battle and they're going to be doing things, but they're going to be, like, the best form of Bridge 4 we've seen. It doesn't feel like they can get much better. Like, I'm sure they'll continue to change and evolve and do things, but it's no longer, like, the focus, if that makes sense. I wrote Kaladin's thing he said in his speech that I just felt like succinctly, perfectly tied up. On page 102, I started this 2 years ago in an effort to get a handful of sorry men to look up for a change. Little did I know they'd end up taking to the skies. And I think asked at the beginning of the video, am I gonna cry? I was like, no. But Bridge 4, that made me emotional. I think that line just like, it's such a beautiful way to even just write that. Literally, they took to the skies, but also figuratively. I think it's a beautiful sentence. I feel like it does everything, like put a little bow on it. Beautiful.
I think Brandon Sanderson makes Kaladin a man of a few words, but when he speaks, like, the words are always so
poignant.
Not always, but usually very eloquent, like that. Like, in those types of moments, like, he knows how to give a speech. Another thing that I think of the speech that was written for Shallan and Adolin's wedding. Same thing. Beautiful. A beautiful way to put those types of feelings into words and to describe the experience that Bridge 4 had together, and that, you know, like we were saying earlier, just what it's becoming and what it becomes now. I also, on my reread, like, felt like this was more emotional to me than like him saying goodbye to his family, which is crazy. But maybe it's just because of that, because the family, like, dynamics are still kind of the same, but Bridge 4 has changed so much.
So I'm just gonna leave as nice and succinct. We'll just leave Bridge 4 at that. Syl and Kaladin go to the library, and there's a whole exchange there. And I'm just gonna detour this, backtrack, maybe talk about this, because Syl is doing weird things. And I think I've been hyper-focused on this, because I think there was the concern, even at the end of Rhythm of War, that she was becoming more like a person, more like physical and things. And this is the fear of, like, Kaladin, do not romance your Spren. And I was just paying attention to these because I feel like I was like, oh my god, Kaladin's gonna romance his Spren. So I just pulled a bunch of the quotes, and here they all are. You can see they call her, like, girlish initially, like. Kaladin, I think it's really interesting from Kaladin's point of view, because, like, Kaladin is acknowledging all of these new things about Syl that he's never noticed about her before. So maybe put that along with, like, Kaladin is more present now than he was in the past and able to pay attention more to these things, but he's paying a lot more attention to Syl than he has beforehand, and I don't know if it's the way I want it to.
She's a woman.
She's a woman! No, I wish you were kidding, but literally that line, girlish at times, but never a girl. She seemed more mature. Like, no, you're right, she is a woman.
I would just like to take a moment to thank Brandon Sanderson for creating a fictional creature such as a Chol, and then creating this conversation between Syl and Kaladin and this librarian, so that every time I see a depiction of a Chol, I will wonder,
is that really what she's got going on down there?
A Chol.
Yeah, that too. Like, suddenly we're talking about save hands, we're talking about Chols. I'm just saying, I feel like there's a certain awareness of her. A while back, didn't Kaladin have that thought where he was, like, having intercourse with a girl, and, like, Syl was on the headboard chanting, go, 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 or whatever? Am I imagining that?
Yeah. Well, no, he did have, well, he had that, he imagined it and was just, like, mortified by that idea. And honestly, I mean, not wrong. Like, that's a valid thing to be mortified by. Like, you have this small personage following you around everywhere, sentient, know what's going on, and, you know, like, Pattern being like, no mating, like, kind of a similar thing.
That being said, I feel like I'm talking about, like, a lot of, like, what is happening. I want to think about why. I'm just thinking of, like, what is different between Syl now versus then. And I think the biggest thing is that Kaladin said the fourth ideal. And so I'm kind of curious if, as Radiants say higher and higher ideals, their Spren's connection to the physical realm becomes stronger, which then causes them to present more and have more power and control over the physical world, which is also why Syl can pick up a pen and start moving things. I'm really interested to see when Pattern and Testament get into the real world, as their Spren is a little different. Like, they've always been kind of material-ish. They've always been on Shallan's clothing somewhere. Like, you can see them. It's not like Syl where she had to, like, assert herself. So I wonder if there's gonna be more in there, or if this is just a Syl thing, if this is a Syl and Kaladin thing, because Kaladin's also got that thing going on with the wind. I don't know. There's a lot going on. I also threw in this quote from Kalik. Kalik says this in Shallan's part. Ishar has been taking Spren from Shazmar and bringing them physically to this realm, and it just kind of makes me wonder if Ishar is trying to do what the Radiants did naturally. It feels like Syl is slowly shifting physically to the realm. So I kind of wonder if she's ever going to be fully physically in the realm, or if she's going to continue to sit on the sideways, or like in the in-between, and be able to jump between the two. I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts here, so I just wanted to put this out there.
Not to jump ahead to Shallan.
Yeah.
But substantiation. Right? Becoming a power that Shallan's able to use, having two Spren in creating something and making it physical for a moment, right? So I think that might be related, or maybe like a similar part of the magic system. Maybe it's a form of substantiation that Syl is going through.
That being said, for the sake of time, I think we're just going to save Shallan for next time. Does that sound like a good plan, Mel?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
We'll see you next time for the next episode of Crem-talking Wind and Truth.
It's been a pleasure, Belle. I'm so glad that we've been doing this. We'll have part 2 of Crem-talking Wind and Truth, day 1, coming next.
In the meantime, read books,
drink water,
and be you. Bye!
Bye!